It's getting dark outside and clouds are getting gray. That means there's a storm brewing, and it's the perfect time to test out the plastic welding and see if it holds. Is it going to be better than flex paste and Gorilla Tape and all those others? We'll have to see by putting it to the test. Let me catch you up on our journey. This is like the 4th attempt to repair these rain barrels. And I'll post all the other videos up here in case you're interested. We use flex paste here on this seam, and I actually took a knife and scribed it up a bit to try to promote the flex paste. We put it here on this crack. The flex paste failed under the water pressure. Here's another application of flex paste. We laid it on good and thick. It worked, but right here where the crack was, it failed. And the crack went down, and I could see how pasty it gets. Not sure if that's because there's no water on it. Here's an application of this waterproof Gorilla Tape and flex paste. Here's the flex paste we tried to do over the Gorilla Tape. In some applications is pretty good. It failed on this one. Problem is when the barrel flexed on the crack and the weight of the water against the crack, it didn't work well. So that's when I started doing this plastic welding. It's not pretty, but it's functional. I'll post up here the evaluation of the flex tape. A couple of years later, the glue has failed and it just peels right off. I think flex tape is really oversold on many different levels. Since I had this Weller wood burning set, just tried it out here in no kind of meshing or anything. This is just straight plastic welding. I left this crack here. I'm going to try to do that with the mesh. It'd be nice if you could only do one side, but I'm thinking I'm probably going to have to do both. There's a lot of welding sets that come with plastic, but I'm a big fan of using the plastic that the component's made out of. And I was able to just kind of shave it off with a Dremel tool. You could also use a hacksaw and get these little rods. I'll go back and smooth that out, and I still make sure that it's going to fit fine. Since I figured it was going to be really hard to show it inside the barrels, I took a Dremel tool and made some incisions here with angles. I'm going to take some painter's tape and seal on this side just to give it a backing. We use the various tools in combination with screen mesh and see if I can determine which is best before I do the ultimate repair on rain barrels here. Here's our challengers for today's throwdown. I've got a plastic welding gun. I'll post below where you can get these. This is just a standard soldering iron, but it's specifically for wood. I've got a screen patch kit that I bought at a local store. I'll put a comparable one below. I've just cut it up into small patches. And then I've got this really thin mesh screen, and it's designed for plastic welding. All of this stuff is pretty easy to cut. This has got a really sharp edge, so you got to be careful. So we're just going to take a little thin piece, and you can see you can just cut it with a regular pair of scissors. My thought is you need to overlap patch that you're doing for structure, but you don't need to go crazy on it. Otherwise you're just doing a lot of plastic welding. This is a very fine mesh. It's even hard to see my fingers behind it. This is a much wider mesh. It's got a little bit of movement on it. This kit comes with the plastic welding gun, and you can see here they're just using electrical connection, one side positive, one side negative, I think. And then you heat up these little brads, and they come in different sizes. Like the plastic welder, this wood burner comes with a whole bunch of different shapes. I'm using a little profiled thing like this, and you might have to clean it up a little bit. That's what I did all the plastic welding with to this point. Not a bad little setup for the price. And you can use this for all sorts of different things beyond plastic welding. When you're doing any kind of plastic welding or any kind of off-gassing of plastics, you want to be outside, you want to have an appropriate mask and safety glasses. Because on this channel, we're all about being safe in all our projects. I'm just going to go straight for it and seal it without any extra material. And all I'm doing is just pushing down a little bit and wedging that in. And once you got it filled, you can pretty it up a little bit. I'm just going right down the middle hole. So now I'm going to take the rod I've made and just try to fill in a little of the extra plastic. Slide it down. It doesn't take much. Just want to melt it and then just feed it into. There's no reinforcement. This is a wood burning tool. Just to show you what you can do. Is it the prettiest thing on the planet? Nope. But it gets the job done. We're going to label these as we go. So this is the wood burner only. So this is the second one. I'm going to use the real fine mesh on this one, and what I've done so far is just lay down a similar approach here, melted into the wedge, added some extra material, and now we're just going to kind of put this over the top and melt it in place and see how it does. Just fuse it in with the plastic. Holy moly, that works pretty good. Not adding any plastic at this point, and then just finish it up. And then I'll do the same here. Just put the second piece in. Once you have it in place, just kind of push it down, get that mesh to fuse in with that plastic. We're not going into art mode here, we're just going into functional mode. Once I've kind of refined my skill set on this top, then we'll go and attack the various locations and kind of reinforce what I've done already on the rain barrels where there's going to be a lot of water pressure. This is the wider mesh. Stick it down in there and just fuse it in place. It kind of works as rebar in concrete. I'm going to put some extra plastic in here because those ends on this mesh seem to be a little problematic and they need a little more goo to keep them down. There, come on. So even though it's easier to initially put this in the plastic, at least the ends are a little problematic. The wood burning tool, nothing, fine mesh, thicker screen door mesh, a little harder to use. This seems to really work well. Here you go into the plastic welding tool. There's two holes there. There's a trigger here. You just push that in. There's different configurations. I'll show all of them to you. When you turn it on, the light goes on. It's got a nice little trigger switch. It feels heavy in the hand, which is fine. Instantaneous heat. Came off. I pushed that off to the side. So you got to make sure you push it down in there. Are a little warm, but not hot. I wouldn't suggest you touch and test that out though. Seems like the only thing that heats up are the little wire pieces. This tool comes with 4 different, what I'll call brad configurations. That might be the best one to put on here from a structural standpoint. This is what I just used to kind of smooth that wedge in. This one, not really sure. I guess they're all bendable. And then this one here, it's got that pattern. I think that's a little too shallow for what we're trying to accomplish there. And here's one that's been used, and here's one that's clean. Now you want to make sure your finger is off the trigger or unplug it before you push that in. They don't go in very far. You don't have to push down very hard at all. Okay, from the initial sealing point of view, it does give you a nice little thinner profile, but it takes a little more practice. I guess I'm more used to the wood burner. Now we're going to just add plastic in like we did to the last one. I like the fact that as soon as you get off the trigger, it shuts off. Unlike the wood burner that has residual heat that you got to be really careful with. Again, you don't want to press down too hard. It seems to be a factor. It will just pop that thing out and it will spark, and you know your connection isn't as good as it should be. Just try doing the little glob approach here. Well, now that I've got a couple minutes on this one, I kind of like this one better. You just have to get your technique down. And just like the wood burner, you don't want to be very close to the heated end or you'll get burned. You might want to wear gloves, like leather gloves, when doing this. So I'm going to finish up doing the same thing here and here, putting a layer down kind of like I did over here, and then we'll go into the extra steps that you got with this welding tool. Mesh down so we can do a side-by-side comparison, and you can probably hear the rain. So I'm going to just go on the side, just tie down an end. Here we go. We're starting to get the plastic to flow. When you smell it, it's like almost like a birthday candle, and that's just the plastic, but you definitely don't want to inhale. Once you get the technique down, I think it's better with the plastic welder. Not saying the wood burner won't work, it's just a different approach. Smooth it all out. I don't have the problem with the ends like I had when I did the wood burner up here. Now we're going to use the extra fine mesh. Once you got it down in a couple places, it's a lot easier to work with. It's almost like I'm tack welding it down. Now let's go in here and just kind of try to smooth it out in place, almost like you're ironing. Let's get a little plastic going on here. Okay, now we're going. Now we're cooking with plastic. So I've just basically put a couple little drops along the way, and then we'll just smooth that out, make it just look a little better. Something interesting happened here. You can see that the LED light's off. it's kind of really warm up here as I'm pushing the trigger on both sides. So I think it overheated and now it's shut itself down. But the ironing approach is definitely the way to go. They timed it so around 6 to 7 minutes, and now it's cooled down. To be fair, I had this on for a long time when I was welding. I was a little concerned I'd lost the unit. Put a new one of these V's on here, and we're just gonna finish this off. I guess the LED also helps under certain lighting conditions to kind of show you where you're going, even though it's not focused on where you're doing your welding. Now we're gonna use what I call the Frankenstein wires. I wanted to show it to you at a slightly different angle so you could get a better understanding of how this works. Just melt it in place, shut it off, give it a couple seconds, and then it pops out. And to give you some comparison, this is heating up and then adding some plastic on top, and this isn't adding any plastic at all, but just pushing down and infusing plastic on the bottom. And I think if you were really looking for a cosmetic approach on this, you'd want to practice like I am on the lid. Not going to be under any kind of load. Yeah, look at that. That's the way to do it. They're like little rockets sitting at the top of the gazebo. Maybe you want to put something over when you're cutting these off. And so you got little posts sticking up. You could probably file those down if you really wanted to. Based on the outcomes of my test runs here, I think I kind of know how I'm going to proceed on the ultimate challenge, which is this rain barrel. So let's take a look down inside and I'll show you some of the details of what I'm going to do. I've cleaned the bottom out with some kitchen wipes. I've highlighted the cracks in black marker so I have the targets. I'm going to have to reach all the way in here and do this. So it's going to be a combination of things. I like what happened here, and I like these things, especially structurally for the bottom. I'm reaching way down in here and just doing a light touch, just barely scratching the surface. I'm not worried at all with cosmetics on this. This is functional. Just trying to melt it, and I'm not adding any material. And that seems to work out pretty good. So I'll get in here and just kind of melt that crack. I feel like I'm getting better and better at this stuff. I've started to lay in some plastic, and we're just going to fill this void in with some goo. Here's the final incision. We put some of those brads in here, built it up. Looks pretty good. Then cleaned off all the other flex paste that didn't work well. You can see the wire brad here. Put it in on both ends. Prevent this big crack from happening again. Melted that down, melted that down. Melted this one, this one, this one. This one over here, and there's another one under here that you probably can't see. Turned it around, wanted to see how it looked from the repair on the other side. This all looks pretty solid. Yeah, it's a lot better than any of the tape, glue, or paste options. This is solid material, added material, that ideally is going to work. So the next thing we need to do is water test it. Here's the final look. I just laid in a whole bunch of material using plastic welder. Checking the wood burner one more time. I saw this nice flat circle, so I'm wondering if I can just come in here and kind of smooth this all out and make it look a little better. I'm really liking this flat surface because you just can melt a whole bunch of material in there and then just smooth it out pretty quickly. It is probably the best yet. I wet tested the barrel, and I had a little leaker here and a little leaker here. So what I did is I took some of that fine mesh screen, put it in place, took the flat circle, pressed down on it, coated it over with some extra melted plastic. Here's the end result, both here and here. Just enough reinforcement, closes the little holes, and I don't think those guys are going to leak anymore. We had some rain a couple nights ago, and the barrel that had all the cracks on the bottom, I let it come up right to this line here, and it hasn't gone down. On this barrel, I had it to come up to this line right here. So let's see the results down below. There's a lot of water in this barrel, but I don't see any leaks. Pretty happy about that. It looks messy, and I'll clean it up a little later, but this is just to show that it's not leaking. We learned a lot here. Trying these two different tools, but also some combinations of screens. And I also tried using cable ties as plastic for the welding, but ultimately cutting off with a hacksaw and trimming off the sides in order to weld in here work the best. I think this works a little better than this. The only problem with this screen is you can sometimes get air gaps in here, especially when you're dealing with a lot of pressure pushing up against the side of this. So you have to make sure that you press down well. These braids right here work really well to hold two pieces together. The only problem is you have the little brads that stick up, and the clippers that they provide in the kit aren't good enough. You're gonna have to go with something easier to hold and has a little stronger cut force. Comes down to this or this, which would you buy? I have both and I'm glad I do. Some applications, this is great. This really helped smooth this in, and once I got my technique down, it seemed to work a little better. If I could only have one, and I'm not too concerned about this, and I'm gonna use screen, then this is your champion. It's kind of a multi-tool because you can use it for wood burning and all sorts of other things, whereas this is just for plastic welding. Now that I've done the plastic welding and succeeded on the rain barrel test, I'm even more disappointed in these products. I think Flex whatever is overhyped. Gorilla Glue and Gorilla Tape works much better. So I'm going to start adding plastic welding into my arsenal of tools that I'm going to use to fix, repair, build, and design things. Thumbs up and comments, always appreciated. Thanks for watching. If you're interested in home repairs, new tools and applications that you may not be familiar with, designs of all kinds, making and breaking things, I even do costumes, cosplay, and props. Check out my channel and please subscribe because you never know what you're gonna see. By the way, I have no idea why they're all orange.